you from?
Kansas City.
Obviously, your auto sport of choice is drag racing.
It is.
What led you to that, Jason?
Probably growing up, my stepdad had a fairly quick cutlass. I mean, I thought it was quick. And then going into high school, a good friend of mine bought a 72 Nova that had a tunnel ram on it. We went to the high school drag with it, and we thought it was fast. And so over the years, just kind of progressed where I've had, I've had over 50 cars in my life so far, and a lot of them have been hot rods. This one being the most extreme.
And what is this one currently? What's your curve?
This one it's a 91 S-10. It has a 6.0 LS in it, kind of like a truck motor. It's all forged internals, LS3 heads and intake, twin 78, 75 turbos, power ride transmission, 4 9-inch, makes roughly 800 horsepower with tires on 15 pounds.
And you've predominantly done most of the work yourself.
Yes. Minus, I didn't build the short block, I didn't tune it, and I didn't do some of the roll cage. RV's a drilling factory. They did some fab work for me in the front end of it. And I did half the paint work. But other than that, I've done everything.
Right, and even at your job was where you guys painted it.
Right.
You got it all ready and then on the painter spray.
Yep, I did all the body work, and I had to do some metal work, and added a bunch to the roll cage this winter, and yeah, I did a lot of the work. It's kind of a passion, I guess. It's like my second life.
And now you kind of, just by knowing you, I know you upped your game some, and you were able to get a nice truck, a decent trailer.
Right.
But before that,
It was rough.
well, you drive this thing on the street
Right.
all the time,
Yes. Yeah, I daily it as much as I can. And at home, I have no home garage. I got a gravel driveway. And just a couple of years ago, I was pulling motors out in the gravel. And I went through quite a few motors before this one. I would break on a Thursday, and by Friday, I'd have the motor out, back in, put back together, and out racing Friday night. Because I pretty much street racing is what I do with it.
Right. You some track stuff now, right?
Right. Every once in a while, I go to the track. But it's a weekend work.
Right. That's the track stuff's only. Is that come about because of having the trailer now? Like you're able to, you can go to the track and not, if it breaks, it breaks, because you're gonna load it up anyways. But you've also been going to the street races now in the trailer too, right?
Right. Just for fear of it breaking, if something happens, I can load it up and take it home.
Right.
Yeah.
What is it about street racing that I guess draws you to it, or what is it that what's it make you, what do you get out of it?
I mean, it's an adrenaline thing. I kind of like the unprepped surfaces. I mean, anybody can go to the track and go fast because it's got VHT down the track and you're going to hook and go. But the streets it's kind of more of a driver's game. You got to, I guess, not tune the vehicle to the street. That, and I kind of like the fear of the cops showing up or whatever. It's kind of like a hustle, I guess. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, I got turned on to it about probably 4 years ago. And my first ever street deal was a big Kansas City cash days, and ever since then I've been hooked.
Now, prior to that, were you just always having some sort of car that was just like something that you had, you were more like just a cruiser, right? Like
yeah,
you weren't really racing.
Yeah, before I was just a cruiser, like hot rods and stuff like that. Yeah, it wasn't until 4 years ago that I finally got hooked on the street racing.
Okay. So would you compare it to dirt track racing compared to like NASCAR, where you have to know how to drive a little, there's a little more driving involved when it comes to the street than if you're at the drag strip?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because the street's not going to be level. It's not going to be. Both lanes aren't going to be the same. You know, it may have hills, it may have dips or whatever. And yeah, you can't just get in it and drive it and think it's going to go straight. Because it's not. I mean, you got to be on your toes.
And obviously, I myself too have been involved in that scene somewhat, but that was when I was a kid. We would go to the street races, and that was a whole different game. I had a CRX that we built with this JDM motor, and it ran at the track. I think I bracket raced it, and I put down 15.23, and I could hit that every time the way I had the car built. But at that time, in 1999, 2000, a 15.2 on a 4-cylinder daily driver, that was a pretty fast car, especially because you race comparable things on the street.
Right.
But even then, there was nothing like it is now. I think in the advent of the last few years, we've seen TV shows come out, do you think that's made the sport grow?
It's a totally different game now. I mean, I drive this one daily, it runs on 885, and I've ran 579 at 126 and 8 mile, that's a pro stock car back in the day. But mine's fast for a street car, but it's not as fast as some of the cars out there.
Now, some of these guys, I would call your car a true street car.
Right.
It's a full, everything on this car.
Right. It's got a radio, it's got interior.
Well, but what I'm saying is you haven't cut, it doesn't have like a race car chassis under it, because that's what I'm seeing a lot of, right? These guys are coming out with basically drag cars that have the main body of the car is still steel, the rest of it's all fiberglass.
Right.
These guys are essentially taking drag cars out on the street.
They are.
And those are mostly, would you call those big tire guys as compared to?
They're still on a small tire, but they're pretty much, they're track cars that they're putting on the street, and they say they're street cars, they're not. Mine's still got all the OEM sheet metal, all the OEM glass, it's got OEM suspension under it. I mean, it's just had shocks and springs put in it, different rear end, but I mean, it's still got all the rolling windows. I haven't lightened it in any way. Yeah, it's a street car.
Also, I feel like it might be a testament to, like, you can do this if you really put your mind to it. Because I'm sure you had no idea how to twin turbo a motor before you started. But also, I mean, you're not dealing with a budget, and you've expressed this to me in the past that you're competing against guys who own big companies, and these guys have money to they have I don't care money.
Right.
But you're able to do this on just a normal guy's budget.
Right, it's definitely a budget bill. I mean, there's a lot of OEM parts reused. Like I say, I'm on a budget. I don't have that throwaway money. I scrape up a little bit of money I can to buy slicks for it or whatever. And it's taken me several years to get it to the point it's at. And it'll probably never compete with those guys that got the unlimited money, but I try anyways. I may be able to one day. But
when it comes to the street, it's not necessarily all about horsepower, correct?
Right,
And some of it's just you might be a better driver than them.
Right. In a tuning game, they might overpower their car.
Right.
It's fun though.
Now, I know that you've talked to me about your father before in the past, and he was always, I know you're building a car for him, or you had done a bunch of work on a car I saw prior. What car was that?
66 Chevelle. And it's still in the process of being done. He wants to drive it before he did it, so it's been kind of put on the back burner because I'm trying to get parts for a motor that I got for it. So.
And it's also getting LS swapped.
Yep.
But it's not so much of a race car as it is
It's a driver.
It's a driver. He wants to just get in and go.
Right. Yep.
Also a very nice car though. I've seen the car. It's got a nice paint job on it.
Yeah.
And you did all the work on that one too.
Yeah, I did full roofs and floor pans and all the body and paint work on that. So.
Where do you think the S-10 is the final form? Do you think there's going to be another car after this? Or is it just something you don't really think about?
I don't really think about it. I mean, the S-10 with V8 in it was something I always wanted. And like I said, I've had a lot of vehicles over the years. I've had Super Sport Monte Carlos, Grand Nationals, Camaros, Firebirds, Trans Ams, but out of all of them, this was probably my favorite. And I don't know that it'll evolve much more from here because everything I get from here on out is like $500 an hour, and I can't afford to buy parts like that anymore. So I'll probably just keep it the way it is and just drive it and enjoy it.
It would be a situation where you would just, over time, you might upgrade some things,
Right.
as opposed to completely redoing it.
Yeah, last winter when I completely redid it, it was just a bare naked soda blasted cab and a chassis. And I started from that point, and I put it to this point for 4 months, just on the weekends, that was Friday and Saturday nights, and I'm wore out. I don't want to do any more work to it. Just not this year.
I know you had talked to me about possibly over the winter adding some graphics to the paint because that was something you had wanted. Prior, the truck was metal flake roof, and it was about 7 different colors the first time I met you.
Yeah, it started out all white, and then it had black fenders on the front, and a red hood, and then a red metal flake at the top, and it was very multi-color. So
the car is beautiful. The truck is beautiful now. I've listened to you come down on yourself a little bit about the body work, but for a guy that isn't a body man, I think you did a hell of a job building the car. For someone who this isn't what you do, per se, you did a great job. It's a great, and the way it runs, I watched you take the head apart on a Thursday when we worked together, and by Friday morning, I come back to work, the truck's ready to go, and right after work, you're loaded up and going drag racing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can do the mechanical part of stuff just fine, but like I said, the tuning, Ryan Mitchell at Casey Max did my tuning, and thank God for him, because he did it one time last year, and I haven't had to touch it. As far as the short block, Kevin at Kev's machine in Liberty, he did the short block, and I haven't had any problems I did it, so.
And who was your buddy that did your cage?
That's Brian Jackson with Evolution Fabrication.
And he's right there. We're in the West Bottoms.
Right.
And he's just down across the bottom.
He's actually up in Smithville.
Oh, he's in Smithville.
Yeah, he doesn't do a cage anymore. Now my buddy that did all my welding on the rest of the cage that I added this winter, that's Alex Redden with Killer Customs.
Okay.
He's right down the road.
He's the one that's down there.
Yeah.
And maybe sometime we'll go talk to him.
Yeah.
So you were talking about being in high school. Where did you grow up at, Jason?
I grew up in north of the river, kind of Avondale, North Kansas City area.
Okay.
Went to North Kansas City.
Went to North Kansas City. Career-wise, what? I know now you currently work as a kind of do-it-all guy at an industrial shop, and you do bedliners. And I know that you and your dad owned a bedliner business for quite a while here in Kansas City. Prior to that, have you always been in the automotive field?
Prior to that, I worked as a diesel mechanic. I went to a little trade school in high school where I did diesel mechanics. I worked for a truck line doing diesel mechanics. Went from there right into doing bedliners with my dad for 16 years, and then I've been at this current company for 7 years, I think.
Yeah, and up here you kind of do.
I do a lot of things here.
You do a lot of things. You're kind of welding.
Right. I do
You're.
rust repair, welding, just whatever they want.
You guys do a lot of it. It's all fully. It's an industrial coatings company,
Right.
so you guys do.
Everything.
But you also bedline here.
Yeah.
Because now they sort of bought you guys out, or you just. They were a customer, right? That's how you landed here. They were your customer when you guys decided to shut down. You just came, they just hired you on to do what you're doing. A lot less headache for you, I'm sure.
It was. Yeah, because I had a little time where I didn't have a job, so when they decided they was going to buy a machine and stuff, they brought me in, and I've been here since.
And I worked with you for a while down here. That's where we met.
Right.
And we can thank Sam and Kale. They're awesome. They always let us use the shop, and
Right.
they still I'm sure once he sees this, he'll go, yeah, I guess, thank you.
Yeah, Kale's a very good boss to have.
No, he's a great guy. He really is, and we've talked about that. It's cool that they were always so open to us as a perk of the job, being able to
use the shop
to work on our own shit.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I know you've been in trouble a little. We always shared that. We had a little sort of past. Do you think that the racing kind of fills in for that? Because I've always felt that, like, I had a guy tell me once that he didn't know if I was addicted to drugs or if I was addicted to, like, the feeling I got from being a criminal.
Right.
And I wonder if you get that same sort of feeling from the street race.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's that, and I think for anybody who doesn't get it, it's like, for me it was always like this rush you got with like adrenaline, but butterflies in your stomach at the same time. Because there's like that, am I going to get caught? Am I going to get away with this?
That little aspect and you know you're doing something wrong.
You know you're doing, like, you know you shouldn't be doing this, but there's this weird thing where it's like, I'm going to get away with it though. Until we don't, and then that's
And Kansas City's pretty good about it. I mean, when they come in, they're usually, you gotta just shut it down, we can't be having this, or you'll get that occasional cop, like Friday night, we was at an undisclosed place, and we were making passes on the street, and this cop drove by, and we're like, whoa, that's a cop, and he went down to a dead end. He was down there for probably 30 minutes, we made a couple more passes, and when he drove back through, he stuck his hand up like this, like, I don't see you guys, and just kept on going. So, there's always that cop, it's pretty cool.
In my experience when I was younger, back then, you would switch. We used to go to Fairfax, and crazy things happened down there where they're like, no more. Then, I know for a time, we were allowed to go to Bonner, out by the caves, as long as we waited until after the last truck ran. And I remember the night that ended, some guy was drunker than hell. I mean, I don't even think I was 21. This guy's drunk as hell, and he's in a Camaro, and he just drove off the road. Well, off the road was 10 foot down, so this Camaro is just in the trees. And then here comes the tow truck driver, who's a dick, called the Bonner cops, and he's like, oh man. But I remember, as long as you were respectful, it seemed like you could find some, like, there's always a road somewhere where people are like, yeah, you guys know, like, the drag strip closed. And I think you probably grew up going to KCIR just like I did. We were just talking about the high school drags that they used to have there. I actually won the import drags in like 2002 with that CRX back in the racing. But is that where you probably started?
Oh yeah.
Racing in general, or just taking whatever you had and going to the strip on? I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday nights that they did the road racing.
Yeah, that's what we started doing.
I guess it was Friday nights probably. Wednesdays and Fridays, I think it was.
Yeah, the only thing we really did way back in the day was the high school drag. We'd wait for it to come around, that was it. But then we started going to Osborne and places like that close. But yeah, other than that, we didn't have nothing but streets. I mean, we always go to industrial areas to do it, and it's always late at night, so there's no public traffic per se. So we try to do it safe, and we always try to pick up any trash we're leaving behind, or be respectful to the properties. And you won't have no problems. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah, I went one time, and I was on my bike, and these guys I knew were like, oh, some other sober guys I knew we were out one night, and they go, oh, well, we could go to the street races. And we were down in KCK, over off 635, and I was still on paper. This is 2 years out from, into this 6-year stint, and the cops show up, and I take off on my bike, and then the next night they're like, yeah, you're coming out. I'm like, no, I'm good, dude. It's really not worth all that. But I've often wanted to go back out again because I used to enjoy it so much. But now it's at the point where it's like every time I talk to someone, they're like, oh yeah, we meet up about 1 a.m. It's like, what? Like,
past my bedtime.
yeah, I'll be asleep by then.
Right. Yeah, it's always a late night deal. Like I said, and I've never seen, in all my years of street racing for the last 4 years, never seen anybody go to jail, never seen anybody get their stuff impounded. I mean, I've seen quite a few wrecks, and I've seen a couple shootings. I've seen a guy die one night, but that was all riff-raff that shouldn't even have really been there.
That wasn't even from the racing.
That wasn't even from the racing. That was just riff-raff hanging out. Two people had beef with each other. They had a shootout, and one guy died. It's pretty chill.
Yeah, and that's like an extreme scenario, right? Like, but with this world,
right,
in any scene there's riffraff.
Exactly.
I don't care if you're drift racing. It doesn't matter if you're building. I mean, I'm into hot rodding, right? And look at what I used to do. Like,
Right.
there's always riffraff somewhere. You can't control that. But like you said, if it wasn't about the racing, it was just whatever personal thing these guys had going
And
on.
that's all it was. It was a gang thing or something. I don't know.
Right, of course.
Unfortunately, a kid lost his life that night.
Right, and that's the bad part.
Right. So that kind of puts a stain on the road after that.
Right, and the whole idea is like doing this is to refrain from that part.
Exactly.
It should be a way like, hey, here's how we'll settle it. Get in your car, I'll get in mine, and we'll take it out here. And then if you lose, that's fine. Come back next week and try again.
Well, see, and one part I don't like about Kansas City is they were having problems with these sideshow people shutting down intersections, doing donuts, or whatever they like to do, you know. So the mayor said, well, we're going to set you out a spot. It's what park they have a burnout pit now, where they can do their donuts and in a controlled environment. But the drag race guys, we don't get nothing. Still ain't got nothing.
Right.
Which is kind of unfortunate, but we're going to do it anyways.
But like I said, it's also, there's a different, you guys have shown a different level of respect.
Right.
To where I wonder if that situation was to try, that was their solution to thwart the violence, or
Right.
if anything, they can watch them now and know where they're going to be at, as opposed, because you guys aren't menacing the streets. And I know what you mean, and I know some of those guys, but that would be a scene where street life, gang culture is very big in, and again, it's a thing, like we were talking about earlier. If you like cars, you like cars. And at a certain point, you gotta sit back and go, hey, that's just their thing. It might not be my thing, but I can respect it. I wish you could show people a little more respect.
Right.
I feel the same way about some of these sport bike guys. I wish they would show a little more respect, because they don't, in the bigger picture, it tarnishes the entire automotive community as a whole. Because the more it splinters, same thing with car shows, the more things splinter, the smaller, it starts breaking down into these subdivisions of tiny groups when it used to, man, I remember.
Everybody gets along with everybody, that's where it should be.
Right, but 20 years ago down on Fairfax, you would see everything from 100 JDM cars, then here comes some dude with some crazy Mustang. Back in the day, I remember if you saw a car and it had that Star chassis sticker on the back window, the big ass one,
Right.
you knew like, oh, that guy means business. You know what I mean? Like, that's where if you had like nobody even had turbo LS. That wasn't a thing that existed. Those motors weren't even happening. This was before that motor even was a thing, right? But like, so if that guy rolled in with a 5-liter Mustang with a Star chassis and a Pro Charger on it, you're like, oh, this guy,
Right.
this is a serious dude.
Yeah. Or even an older car with a blower on it.
Right, and old, like a lot of cutlasses. There's always a lot of cutlasses. There used to be a guy that had a orange Monza out here. And that thing had a big block in it, and it was stupid fast.
Right.
Stupid fast.
Yeah, it's like the factory cars. It's nothing to see a factory car with 500 horse anymore. 500 and up is crazy anymore. The horsepower wars are on.
Well, and I just recently saw where Dodge is going to quit making the Challenger and the Charger now, and focus on their own. They're building an electric Challenger, which electric cars, that's cool, man. That's cool too.
They're fast.
They're fast. They don't last long, but they're fast.
And the range ain't very far, but they're fast.
Right.
Yeah, I think that Tesla makes like 1,000 horsepower or something.
Oh, they're crazy.
And it's crazy fast. I mean, it's a 9-second factory car on radials, which is crazy.
That's crazy. And I remember when I was coming up, the guys that got me into, like, I was into cars already, and I wanted to build cars. And Jay Kaczynski, who you know from drag racing, his dad and uncle, they played a huge role in me getting into this. But his dad had this legit drag car, the Rabbit Rap, and they still have it. Yeah, it was awesome.
I think it'll be making a return sometime.
No, it still runs. Jake got his license with it a few years ago. I'm sure Tim's always kept it running, from what I remember. But same thing, like Scott, his uncle, had this yellow Vega wagon that had good vibrations, and it was mini tubbed. It had a 302 in it or something. It's a crazy, like, bored out 305 or something. But I remember it was like, that was the fastest car I ever ridden. Tim took me for a ride, and it was like, it had race seats and a cage. You know, in Boulder, he took me down 7 Highway, and that's the fastest car I've ever ridden. It was probably like a 10 or 11 second quarter-mile car. But at that time, that was crazy. Right. To have a 10-second quarter-mile was crazy. Where do you feel like the sport is growing of street racing? Is it become stale?
I think it's growing just from the publicized street outlaws and stuff like that. They've made it blow up with that.
Right, and some people, I mean, it's one of those things where people will talk bad about it. It is a reality TV show. I've been involved in one in a way. It's reality television, so some of it's fake.
Right.
I think it is interesting. It's cool to see the cars and see them racing. Yes. The rest of the stuff, I think most people could care less about. Right. And I've met a couple of those guys, and they seem like they're decent enough people. And I think that's great. I think it would help if there. Do you think it would help if you guys had a spot? Like, I know there's this like famous street racing crew in the 70s in Los Angeles that I listened to this docuseries about, where the city actually gave them a section of road so that they could have a strip to race on, so they didn't have to do it on the streets.
Oh yeah, that definitely helps.
And that would make it to where everything was a lot less.
I think the reason they're doing this is that they worry about somebody getting hurt on the property, they would be liable, and they can't carry insurance on it. That's the whole thing with the drag strip, is the insurance is so expensive on it. So that's why we just do it where we can, I guess.
Now, there's Harlem Park, which that's millennia away, it feels like. Isn't I-70 going to have a drag strip at it eventually?
They were supposed to open one in, I think, 2019, and they still, I don't think that Lafayette County's let it go through or something for some reason. I don't know why, because the old track opened up, but there's supposed to be a drag strip out there too.
Yeah, is that dirt? It's dirt, right?
It's dirt.
Right. It used to be asphalt, correct? I went there for the motorcycle flat track racing. I just couldn't remember.
And it's a really nice complex out there. I've been out there and watched the sprints run, so it's really nice.
No, yeah, it was. Everything was brand new. It was nice. It was like Lakeside, but new, you know.
Right.
Which I love Lakeside still. That's if you've never gone to see local dirt track racing, where just the guy who works at the mechanic shop has a stock car and is racing, I really think you're missing out on like.
You're not living right.
Oh, it's so much fun. I have a buddy I grew up with, Rodney Schweitzer, and he owns a shop in Edwardsville now. But I just saw where he won again. He won the feature on Friday night. And I've seen him win consistently. It's great. That's how I got into cars too. When I was a kid, my dad's one of his best friends
Yeah, that's,
Tom Charles, he was a drag, they started out street racing when they were kids in the 70s down Paul's Drive. That furloughed into a couple of my dad's friends had stock cars. And Tom raced a modified. He had another buddy, I believe his name was Eddie A-Leg, and he lived in KCK somewhere. But he had like a stock, like a pony stock class car or something. But Tom had that modified. I remember being a little kid, seeing the naked Matco ladies on the shop wall, on the calendars and the clocks, and then getting to steer the car out of the shop when they would be moving it, you know.
yeah, when I was growing up, we used to go to Riverside Stadium, watch a race on the dirt there. And my dad was involved with some dirt track guys growing up and some NASCAR guys growing up. So I've always been around it. It's probably part of the fuel for the fire I got going.
Right. Yeah, and I think when we sit down and think about it, we always realize like, oh, when I was a kid, someone like pounded this into my head in some way.
Yeah, there was a local guy, his name's Mouse, he used to do pinstriping. He would letter a lot of race cars, but his shop was real close to my house, and we used to always go down there and I'd get to walk around the shop and look at the race cars up close. And just the people that was involved with the race car were always pretty cool. So I've always enjoyed it.
I had a similar thing. Tiny McTaggart, signed by Tiny. Tiny was a pinstriper, and his shop he was the mayor of Edwardsville forever. He might still be, I don't know. But his shop was down the road from my parents' house. So when I really started getting hot rodding and custom painting, I used to go hang out at Tiny's, and he always had like, I mean, at that time he had been doing it for years and years, and he was friends with Mouse because I've met Mouse before. But like, there's always some cool race car, like blaze paneling, and like all hand lettering in there. You're like, what is this?
Yeah, just being around the cars and everything. I built model cars as a kid, and I've always been a car guy.
Now you had a bike at one time, right?
Had a few.
You had a few.
Yeah.
Now, was that a similar, like, was it the rush that you got being on that bike?
Oh yeah, and I lived with a couple that was bikers, and their whole family was bikers, and so I got my first bike, and yeah, it was a rush. I liked it. It was an old Kickstart 65 Sportster, iron head. It was chopped and had a hardtail on it, and it was a cool little bike. And I rode it for a year or two and sold it regretfully. And then I bought another one, a big chopper. And I rode it until I got hit by a stray car that got hit in a high-speed crash, and I said, I'm done riding bikes. But it was a rush riding bikes. I like it.
That was my first bike, was an iron head chopper.
They're fun. Good bikes to learn on.
Great
They're
bikes.
fast and small.
Oh, it was at 1,000.
Yeah.
It was nice, the tight bars, raised up front end, just
Big enough for one person to ride.
oh yeah, great for in the city too.
Yeah.
I always built a bike to ride around the city.
Yeah. And it would outrun a lot of the new bikes because they were so small and light.
There's nothing on it, right? I just, again, same thing, when you got nothing on there, just a frame with two wheels. I often think that most cars are the same way. This is just a chopper with, it's the same thing. When you break any of these cars down to that level, it's really just like a body with a drivetrain. And everything else is whatever you want to do.
Right. It's got the necessities. But that's it.
Right, and that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Are you doing any track racing coming up? Or I know there's a few events that you've gone to in the past. Is any of that stuff?
Probably not. I mean, there's probably going to be a little cash days on the streets next month that I'll probably be involved in, but nothing.
But maybe if it works out, maybe I can come out and
Right. Well,
get a dose of that.
there's actually one next weekend at Osborne that I was going to probably be involved in. It's a King of the 28s up there. And I was probably just going to go with an ET class, but I have a ticket from last night where they got rained out that it's still good for entry the next weekend, so I'll probably be going up there next Saturday night.
And when they do those, Jason, do they usually get like a deal worked out where it's sort of like, we give you a little bit of under the radar permission to do this, or is it still just as...
What, the deal the next weekend?
Yeah, like any of these cash days, because I always heard people talk about the cash days.
Well, next weekend will be Osborne at the track.
At the track.
Right, but the cash days deal, no, it's still, you're risking the cops coming.
You're risking the cops.
Yeah, we don't make any kind of decision or anything. We just do it.
Now, for people that don't know, could you tell them exactly what is involved in a cash days type race?
It's a buy-in deal. You know, they'll have a list to say 25 cars, and all 25 people throw in, you know, anywhere from $100 to $300. It all goes in the pot, and then the winner wins pretty much all of it. The second place guy might get, you know, his entry back, but otherwise it's winner takes all type of deal.
And that's heads up.
Heads up. You know?
One loss, you're done.
Right.
Just a
Like
regular bracket.
Yep. It's pretty much a set list of rules, you know. It's flashlight start, you know, you don't want to cross the center line. If you jump, you're out. Pretty basic rules.
And now, do the rules change from place to place, kind of? Like, I'm sure around the metro here, it's probably pretty standard because it's the same. It's the same community. But if you go out of town, is there different things that happen in different places?
Yes, definitely. You know, they start them different in other places, or they might have chases a race. That's if the guy jumps and you take off after him before the flashlight comes on, then it's a race. There's several different things that change, but
yeah, I've always noticed that here. I feel like everything is pretty much, we're lining up heads up, and that's it. Like, there's no, I'm going to give you a car. There's none of that stuff. Right? Yeah.
It's just the fastest guy wins.
Right.
Which is hard to compete with guys that own businesses and are making 5-second passes, low 5-second passes on the street.
And I mean, there's some pretty famous.
There's a few in Kansas City.
There's a few guys out here that are pretty well known.
And they're very fast.
The Larsons.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a long time. Jacob is always
Ryan Mitchell, Kimball going.
Yeah, there's a whole list of guys that are very well.
I'm not saying they're doing any kind of illegal activity, but they're pretty fast.
Right.
They're from Kansas City. Whether they go to Mexico, they might go to Mexico. I don't know.
Yeah. They're and I can attune for Jake. He also has just.
There's a lot of fast people in Kansas City. Really.
Right. There's a lot of fast people. And do you think that that's due to like you guys all pushing each other?
Probably.
To go and be better? Because it doesn't, I never hear anyone say a cross word about anyone else.
Right. You don't want to be a sore loser. If you're a sore loser, this ain't the sport for you.
Right.
You take your loss and you use that as a building block to get a little faster. I mean, that's what the game is about.
Right. And some of those guys have obviously, they've leaned more towards track racing now.
Right.
I know.
That's how they get faster too.
Right. Because they start going to the track more and more.
Lots of testing. And a lot of guys don't like to share secrets either, I've noticed. Like which I don't like that aspect of it. I feel like you should want to help the next guy get a little faster. Maybe not faster than yourself, but a lot of them guys are pretty secretive about their stuff.
Right.
But there's a few out there that are pretty good. That'll get their numbers.
And I think that's probably more of a track mentality than it would be a street. I feel like the street guys probably would be like, oh yeah, hey, you're cool, dude. Like, hey, let me pick your brain on things,
Right.
you know.
It's a pretty good community. I haven't had really any problems. And if there is, it gets talked out. So,
Right. Yeah, it gets talked out as opposed to
right, bad-mouthing each other.
bad-mouthing each other or whatever. Or going down the road that those other guys took that you spoke about earlier. For somebody in losing their life over something as stupid as a drag race. Because at the end of the day,
we're just all out there trying to have fun.
Across the street is a coffee shop, and I was talking to them about, to one of them in there about, oh yeah, I want to go talk to Jason about his truck, and they said, well, what does that guy even do with that thing? I was like, oh, well, they street race. And here we go. She looked at me and she goes, that's not stupid. And I said, well, what do you guys got going on here tonight? She goes, oh, it's the barista league. And I said, what is that? And she goes, well, it's like who can, I said, you're telling me everybody's have a competition of who can pour the best cup of coffee. And she looked at me and started chuckling, and she goes, yeah, it sounds pretty stupid when you say it like that. I said, well, yeah, of course, it's the same thing. You're drag racing with coffee. And she's like, well, that kind of makes sense.
Right.
I think, again, if you've never been to a drag race, it's something you should really seek out. When you might, I've been on this kind of journey to like understand other people and like be more open instead of like being like, oh, that's, be like, oh, well, why do you like it? You know what I mean? Like, then I can have an understanding, like, oh, these people enjoy this because of the thrill, because of the technical aspect, because like, there's also a showy aspect where like, before some people looked at your truck and they're like, look at this piece of shit.
Right.
Now they see it and they're like, oh, damn.
Right.
That's a, dang.
And then you see it go down the road from a standing stop to X mile per hour, and you're like, wow, that got there really fast.
Yeah.
Or you see a street car like this pull a wheelie on the street, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or shooting flames out the fenders or whatever. It's all pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, man, it's a whole different world that I've sort of been around, but not really. Like I said, I really would like to go to the Cassidy's thing with you and check that out. Whether or not I can film or not, I don't care. I would just like to go and meet some more people,
right,
and see some. I'd like to see the thing in action as an adult and really see it up close,
Yeah, for sure. It's a good time. They usually try to keep them hush-hush just to keep from, because if one spectator hears about it, the next thing you know, you got 300 people on the street. They're all standing in danger and have to yell at everybody to get back, and it's hard to get the cars through. So they keep them all hush-hush, but we can probably definitely get you to the next one.
Yeah, we can get a little. Right. We'll save it. Nobody else go. I'll get a little footage. You'll get make it a real deal. And I know there's some local. There's some who the guys that do film all the street races.
Right. Yeah.
The 1320 videos, right? Is that those guys?
660 Street, and then
there's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them.
I can't remember. There's that guy. Who's that skinny guy? Is that guy still around?
Oh, I don't know.
Skinnies.
There was burnout photography for a while, and there's Faux Daddy Racing, and there was a bunch of them.
There was a guy, he just set up next to us. I went with one of my when I went to the street rod shop, he set up at that, what's that roadkill? Whatever that drag street race, no prep thing they had at the Kansas Speedway that time.
Yeah.
We went to that, and this guy he had like skinny secret
sauce.
Yeah, that guy he was a nice guy.
Yeah. His company's blown up pretty big.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, that stuff's everywhere.
Oh, really? That's cool. Well, we talked about Brian earlier. He bought an actor. He bought the machine shop out that builds your motors. But he's always been involved in that world somehow. We'll talk to him about that soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, so his company's really bounced now.
Right, and it's good because it's good for the community to have. And he's a guy that now when people are building high horsepower vehicles like that, and they ask me like, who do I go for this specific thing? I'm like, well, you got to like go to Brian because he's the guy. He's going to be able to take care of that. Like, it's one thing to the shop I'm at now. We most certainly build some cool stuff, but we don't build race cars. We build really cool street cars. But street is in like you can get in this thing, drive it. It's a pretty rad ride. But we're building more show car stuff, drivable show cars than we are like applications where this guy's trying to do some serious business.
And it's hard to find a good race shop. I mean, there's not very many in Kansas City that do special work like race car stuff. And the ones that are in Kansas City are usually backed up, like, and you gotta pay big money.
Yeah, I know. There's the guys in Boulder that have the dyno.
Yeah.
The LSX Killer, I think is the name of that shop. And you got Accurate. And then
Casey Max.
Casey Max. They've been around for quite a while.
RV's Adrenaline Factory down the road. They do a lot of fabrication work, one-off stuff.
Yeah, I need to go meet that guy sometime. I've never
He's
really
good
met
dude.
him. They got a lot of drift cars,
They have a lot of drift cars now.
which is a whole other thing that I have some friends that are into, which is very interesting.
Right. Well, see, and he's like you. He wants to be in the full spectrum of everything. He has always done imports and drift cars, but like he did fabrication on my truck. He's got a good friend of mine that I grew up with. He's got his drag car down there building custom headers for it. So he likes branching off, doing stuff he's never done. So
Yeah, I've been working on that Miata that's got an LS and a wide body kit. It's a wild car, but that guy's there. This old guy who just likes weird cars.
right.
Yeah, apparently just builds weird stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But he has no intention of drifting it. But I have another friend that has a Miata that he was a guy who no mechanical aptitude. And during the pandemic, he took this Miata that he had, turbocharged the motor himself, turned it into a drift car, and then now he like holds drift events. And like now he's going all over the Midwest drifting and stuff. It's pretty wild to watch somebody. It's like, oh, I guess that's a pretty good testament to like if you want to do that, you just do it.
Right.
Figure it out.
Right.
Because this S-10, I'm sure it wasn't perfect the first time you did it,
No.
but now you've got it to like probably the most solid it's ever been, right?
It's pretty reliable. Yeah. It's twin turbo, runs on the 85, and I drive it pretty much daily. No, I haven't problems with it. But it used to be a mess.
Right, and they all start out like that.
Right. But I like it. I get a lot of compliments on the color. Everybody likes the color.
When you first told me you were going with that, wasn't sure, but after the fact, I love it, and I can't wait to see it with some raspberry graphics down the side and some neon green added onto it. I think it's gonna. I can't wait for the winter to come. It sucks that winter's coming because I know you can't race it,
Right.
but I'm stoked to see what you do with the paintwork this winter.
It'll have something. I like the blue. I like all the blue, but I want to break it up some.
Right. And it'll just give it more of a racing vibe too.
It will. You want more character. For sure. Everybody's seen it blue now, so it's time to change it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down with me, Jason. I know you're not a big social media guy, so we don't need to go over that. But if you guys are in Kansas City and you see Jason's truck, just give him like a double honk and a wave.
Right.
And, stop and talk to him if you see him. But I look forward to seeing what he does in the future, Jason.
Yeah, for sure.